I had never imagined that day would arrive. She sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes icy, voice sharper than a knife. "I hate being with you," she said, almost rehearsed, as if she had said it 1,000 times before. I stared at her silently, my heart pounding, but my face remained calm. No shouting, no begging, just a quiet nod. Inside, a storm raged, but outwardly, I was composed. I knew the right moment to act had come, and that moment was now. The air felt heavier than ever, suffocating. I walked to the closet, opened my suitcase, and began to pack. Slowly, deliberately, I folded each shirt, rolled each pair of trousers, my movements measured, almost ceremonial. She watched, a mixture of confusion and disbelief on her face. "Where are you going?" she asked, her tone teetering between mockery and panic. I didn't answer. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own words, the coldness she had spat out like venom. Each item I packed symbolized a part of our years together that she had trampled without care. 10 minutes, she would realize, and it would be too late. Memories flashed through my mind as I zipped the suitcase. Our first apartment, the nights we laughed until our stomachs hurt, the mornings she made coffee for me. Every smile she once wore now felt like a mask, hiding disdain. I remembered how I had forgiven her countless small betrayals, how I had bent over backward to keep our life intact. And yet, here she was, declaring hatred as if our shared history was meaningless. I took a deep breath, letting the calm exterior mask the burning betrayal inside. This was not the end of the story, only the beginning of a reckoning. She tried to argue, words stumbling from her lips, but they were hollow, desperate. I shook my head, silently telling her that it was over. No tears, no anger, just quiet determination. I picked up my suitcase, slung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. The sound of my footsteps echoed in the hallway, each step deliberate, measured. She followed, calling my name, but I didn't look back. The 10 minutes I had left were my gift to her, to let her reflect, to let her dread what awaited her outside, the truth she had never anticipated. The moment I stepped outside, I hailed a car I had prearranged. My driver had instructions: go straight to the address I had given. She would have no idea what was happening. As the vehicle rolled away, I pulled out my phone, double-checked the message I had sent to someone waiting at her doorstep. My heart remained steady, but my mind was sharp, like a hawk watching its prey. I knew the effect of the next 10 minutes would be catastrophic. Her world, so carefully built on lies and manipulation, was about to crumble before her eyes. Back inside, she realized I was gone. Panic replaced arrogance. She called my phone, but I ignored it. Each ring echoed in the empty room, a haunting reminder of the power I now held. She began pacing, her confidence eroding with every passing second. She looked around, realizing that I had taken more than just my presence. My silence, my calm, my dignity were now tools of judgment she could not control. The reality of what she had provoked began to sink in. 10 minutes, that was all it would take for her to confront a truth she could never undo. Outside her door, the figure I had arranged to surprise her waited patiently. Someone she had never expected, someone whose presence would ignite the perfect storm. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. My instructions were clear: remain calm, let her arrive, let her see. This was not about revenge for the sake of cruelty, it was about revelation, about justice. When she opened that door, she would finally comprehend the magnitude of her words, the impact of her coldness. And I would not be there to shield her from the consequences. The stage was set. She arrived home, door swinging open, and the living room looked ordinary at first glance. But then her eyes caught the unexpected. Shock froze her in place. Her world, built on assumptions and lies, fractured in an instant. The person waiting for her, a symbol of truth she had never imagined confronting, stood silently, eyes steady. Her gasp cut through the room, a mixture of fear, regret, and disbelief. I could almost hear her heartbeat, irregular, panicked, as realization hit. All the arrogance she had shown, all the disdain, now collapsed under the weight of the unforeseen revelation. I had chosen this moment carefully. Her shock, the collapse of her false sense of control, it was poetic justice. No shouting, no confrontation, just revelation. Her betrayal, her callousness, the disdain she had harbored, all reflected back at her through the eyes of the one she had underestimated. And she could do nothing. 10 minutes, that was all it took to turn the tables, to invert the hierarchy she had assumed, to show her the consequences of cold cruelty. Silence, in this moment, was louder than any accusation. She staggered backward, unable to form words, each breath shaky, as the full gravity of the situation hit her. Memories of her scorn, her mockery, her dismissive attitude came flooding back, amplified by the living proof of her failures. The truth she had tried to bury now stood tangible, undeniable. Her facade cracked. She had always thought she controlled the narrative, but now, in this room, the narrative controlled her. She wanted to retreat, to apologize, to erase the moment, but it was already etched in the air, unchangeable, indelible, a mirror of her own cruelty. I watched from a distance, concealed, observing the unraveling of her pride. The person I had sent was calm, composed, yet their presence radiated authority, a silent judgment she could not escape. Every gesture, every glance, reinforced the reality she had ignored for too long. Her eyes darted, searching for answers, for excuses, for someone to shield her, but none came. The silence, the waiting, the expectation, it was perfect. Justice needed no words, no confrontation. 10 minutes had transformed the ordinary evening into a theater of consequences, a reckoning she had never anticipated. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were tears of realization, not remorse. She finally understood that words can wound, but actions define reality. Her hatred, her disdain, her coldness, they were now reflected back at her through the presence she never imagined confronting. Each second dragged, a slow unveiling of consequences. Her ego, once towering, crumbled. I remained unseen, a ghost in the background, witnessing the transformation of her arrogance into humility, fear, and comprehension. 10 minutes, and everything she thought she knew about control, about power, about me, shattered. She sank to the floor, finally unable to sustain the weight of the revelation. The person waiting did not mock, did not celebrate. They simply stood, silent, unyielding, a mirror to her own actions. And in that silence, she understood the depth of her misjudgment, the cruelty of her words, and the permanence of her choices. There was no turning back. The 10 minutes I had granted her had stretched into a lifetime of realization, a reckoning she could not escape. The world she had built on disdain collapsed in fragments at her feet. I never returned that night. I let the scene unfold, her pride shattered, her arrogance dissolved, and her world irrevocably changed. She would remember those 10 minutes forever, the sound of her own disbelief, the sight of the one she never imagined confronting her. And I, silently removed from the chaos, had delivered the most eloquent response to her hatred without uttering a single word. Calm, composed, decisive, the truth had spoken louder than any argument. Her lesson was learned, and my presence was no longer needed in the theater of her reckoning. The morning came, but it brought no solace for her. The person I had sent remained, a constant reminder of her misjudgment. Every reflection, every thought, every corner of her life echoed the lesson of the previous night. She had underestimated the power of silence, the weight of action, and the inevitability of truth. And I moved forward unburdened, free from the coldness that had sought to consume me. 10 minutes had been enough, and in that brevity, I had rewritten the narrative, leaving her with the consequences she had chosen, stark, undeniable, and eternal.